So now we have our next speaker, Dr. Abdelzaher. Dr. Abdelzaher is a professor of management at the University of Houston in Clear Lake and an award-winning author on women, entrepreneurship, environmental ethics, and global management topics. Dr. Abdelzaher is also the founding director of Youth for Better Houston, Youth for a Better Houston, a grassroots group that works with teens to build leadership through community service. So please welcome Dr. Abdelzaher.
Now I know what they're talking about. Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Really blessed and honored to be here and being invited to speak and share some of my research and thoughts with all of you. It's very, very difficult to speak after, Sheikh Man, may Allah bless him, and everyone that put this together. And Brotherhood, definitely, you made this very difficult for me. I can't see you in the audience, but if you're here, I want to thank you for that, for both of you. I think what makes this conference different, I'm going to try to stand somewhere where the light is not in my face, but maybe this is difficult. Okay, never mind. Obviously, this conference is very different than any other conferences that I've presented at for many reasons, but I think one of the most significant thing about this conference is the fact that people here are very passionate about what they're talking about. This is not striking me as a conference of networking or small talk or just checking off the box for academians to go and present research. But obviously people are very passionate because alhamdulillah we're all Muslims and we're all, as the brother said, we live here and we're Allahu Alam, but high chance we may die here. So we care about the community so much. We care that our offspring live in an environment where they are, inshallah, being strong Muslims and creating that legacy. So that passion came across many of the topics today. My topic is going to shift a little bit, but inshallah, it is in line with what we have been talking about. So my research is on Muslim women entrepreneurs and talking about the challenges and the opportunities. Okay, so who are entrepreneurs? We all know the importance of entrepreneurs and the importance of entrepreneurship as the fuel of our economy, particularly not just, in emerging markets, but in a developed economy like the US. Who are entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurs are individuals that are comfortable with maybe taking a little bit more risk than a traditional employee. They are people that are often seeking independence, flexibility of the work schedule, maybe seeking an alternative mode of creating income. And the stronger that these attributes are in individuals, the more likely they are to become entrepreneurs. And but one of the important things about developing entrepreneurs is the existence or the relevance of having entrepreneurial role models. And this is something that's very, very important for us to keep in the back of our mind, is that are we creating that community of role models for not just entrepreneurs in general, but particularly for women entrepreneurs. And very often entrepreneurs go into this area. Some are very passionate, they have a cause, they have a product, a process, something they want to bring to the market, that's kind of a very potential way, but many go into entrepreneurship out of no other option. Inability to find jobs, inability to find a secure income, then they find themselves thrown into kind of entrepreneurship without necessarily the know-how. So, and for the immigrant population, that becomes challenging because many of them have to balance significant challenges relating to their social, religious environment. Now, let's get some facts talked about. So definitely the Global Entrepreneurship Index actually ranks the US as the best country in the world for entrepreneurs. I don't know how many people agree. How many people agree if there's any entrepreneurs in the room? I hope that doesn't mean that you don't agree. Maybe there isn't any entrepreneurs. Well, that's what the Global Entrepreneurship said. But so it's basically saying that it's a good time to be an entrepreneur. Okay, particularly not just a good time, but it's a good place. Now, for women entrepreneurs, the number of businesses owned by women has actually increased by more than 114%. So I'm sure you guys have, in your daily experiences, you're often dealing with more and more businesses that are owned by women, and the revenue of these businesses as well has increased on a steady rate. So definitely, this is a good time for entrepreneurs, and particularly women entrepreneurs, to start, to move forward and to flourish their business. But we are talking about issues, right, and trouble, right? So the world is not all rosy and perfect. And this is where our research comes in, and we look at stigmatized groups. And of course, nobody wants to acknowledge that there's stigma associated with being Muslim or being an immigrant and all of that stuff. But the reality is there is stigma. And unfortunately, this stigma is growing. And this is the context, this is the world that we live in. Now, we may take a positive approach and, as we tell our children, yeah, you are different, but you are unique and you are strong. And yes, being stigmatized in different aspects could be a way of building confidence and definitely a different skill set, but it does make challenges, right? And for the entrepreneur as well, belonging to a stigmatized group could be challenging as well, because they don't receive the same work opportunities and the same trajectory as non-stigmatized group. How is stigma defined? It is the possession of an attribute that has a negative connotation. And when we think about that, I think many of us can relate to that. What is this negative connotation coming from? It comes from everywhere and anywhere you can expect it. So, and as Muslims, we have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, and that makes even more challenging for entrepreneurs. Stigmatization and entrepreneurship literature, looking at both of these together, is something that has not been significantly developed. The research on stigmatization entrepreneurs have basically looked at, for example, the fact that, I could move around. Hold on. Yes, okay, this is better. Yeah. So the research on stigmatization entrepreneurs basically looked at entrepreneurs being stigmatized either because they have a history of failure, so there's stigma associated with that entrepreneur because they have failed consecutively. Other areas of research looked at negative stigma associated with the core line of business that this person is doing. So for example, we may have a stigma associated with businesses, for example, that sell alcohol, right? So there's a stigma that associated with the core business. But research looking at the ethnicity and the foreignness of the entrepreneur as a source of stigma, that has not been an area of extensive research, and this is where our research comes in. Now, of course, the media has not helped the case. As we all know, the media fuels more and more stigma to different groups, immigrants in general, Muslim immigrants in particular as well. So in today's rhetoric in both the media and a lot of the political rhetoric, we see some of this. This paper was published in 2022, and at this time it was actually fueled by President Trump's talking about, the immigrants and the refugees and, as an invasion, and just creating the sense of fear in the community, which was actually impacting directly immigrant entrepreneurs, particularly Mexican American entrepreneurs, as well as Muslim entrepreneurs, because both of these segments were talked about a lot in the political rhetoric. So this is not helping. We have seen, things of that in the news, holding up signs saying our parents are not criminals. So children of immigrant groups or different groups that have been attacked in the media have to kind of live with that so-called stigma. Even more specifically, the Muslim ban, if you all remember that, has directly impacted a lot of business, operations, a lot of business entrepreneurs, because they now have to kind of, again, speak to how are they, this or that, or do they fall into this bucket or that bucket? And that creates stigma for the entrepreneurs. So how does this particular stigma impact Muslim women entrepreneurs is what drove our research. Alhamdulillah, it's published, but nevertheless, I'm very happy to come and speak to you about it. So this is the title of the work, Stigmatized Minorities. So particularly looking at minorities, looking at entrepreneurs, and looking at how do they, what are the challenges that these women entrepreneurs or stigmatized groups in general face, and then how do they cope with these different stigmas. So we did qualitative research, speaking to women about their entrepreneurial journey and the challenges that they face. Some of them were veiled, wearing the hijab, others were not. They were either fully or partially owners of their business, and their age diversifies, their ethnicity as well diversified. And we were trying to really understand, let's talk about, the real issues. And if the real issue is that there is stigma, then let's, again, we're all here to kind of make sense of the world that we live in. So as the brother is saying, let's, talk about what are the issues, acknowledge that there is stigma. And maybe by putting it forward, publishing it, we can, as a community, realize that there are solutions. And sometimes the solutions are actually within our community. So kind of like, finger pointing to our community more than the outside, which sometimes is not easy to do. So the interview components basically talked about, motivation, what makes you start your business, what drove you to do it, what is the perceived level of stigma. So they talked about different incidents of stigma. We categorized that and then came up with understanding their coping mechanisms. Why are we researching Muslim women? Because if you, if you look around you, Muslim women are becoming more and more active in the American Muslim workplace. So we are working with more Muslim women. More of them are starting careers. More of them are in the workplace, and more of them are being entrepreneurs. But we are not shedding light on them in terms of research. In fact, most of the literature that talks about Muslim entrepreneurs talk about them in Muslim majority markets. So we're not studying them in markets like the US, in which Muslims are a minority. And because these Muslim women face challenges brought about by different work-life balance issues, coming from their social circles, coming from their cultural background, as well as religious understanding of what the Deen says, they are a very, very unique group that's worthy of studying. Now, what is the Islamic perspective on women entrepreneurs? It's very important to talk about this because, again, when you look at like culture of what is acceptable in terms of what does Islam say about what is acceptable for a Muslim entrepreneur woman, we really need to reconcile, both, because there's definitely a gap in the community between people advocating versus people saying, no, you should not be doing this. Majority of scholars uphold the position that Islam promotes entrepreneurial activities. Particularly, alhamdulillah, like Dina Khadija radiallahu anha, she's the icon for Muslim women, of being an affluent, business owner that, was successful, honorable. So for many women, they of course, all of us, she is, of course, our role model, inshallah. But of course, there are conditions. So, making sure that our Islamic entrepreneurial venture that we are running, our businesses, is in full conformance to Islamic values, including funding, including Islamic Sharia, Islamic regulations. We are within the halal boundaries of what is lawful, what is not, including observing the values of honesty, haya, and the core values that make any Muslim a good Muslim. Ensuring that there is not a conflict with family life, and making sure that she's doing due justice to her duties, as well as serving the well-being of the community. Now we know in Islam, organizations are not profit-seeking organizations. Perhaps even though like now in the management literature we talk about, for business students, they may agree with me, we talk about corporate social responsibility as sort of like a new phenomena that's new to the market. But in reality, Islam has always been talking about organizations as social serving entities. They make profit, yes, but they are serving a bigger aim. Now, when the Islamic understanding is not there, and we leave this to a lot of cultural interpretations, that can be very, very costly, because that can cause a lot of women to have a very, very tough journey when they are trying to embark on their entrepreneurial endeavors. So what are the challenges? I think, as I mentioned, it's important for us to talk about these challenges, acknowledge their existence, and see how women are coping with it, and seeing how we as a community can become part of the solution and hopefully not part of the problem. So as I mentioned, they're facing challenges related to their culture, social, and of course, financial challenges. So the first finding that came from our qualitative research with our entrepreneur women is discrimination, right? So discrimination towards immigrants in general. And this is nothing new. I mean, there was always, literature documents discrimination against entrepreneurs coming from different parts of the world, particularly the Mexican American, segment, significant research on that, as well as recently Arabs, including Muslims and non-Muslims, reported increased perception of discrimination. And this is causing them a lot of psychological distress in their business, And for an immigrant or for somebody that's coming in the economy that really needs it, this is their only way of survival. This really makes things very, very challenging. Some of the testimonials of what these women are talking about, they speak about this kind of refugee label, like I'm labeled as a refugee, and the kind of negative connotation that goes with that. So one woman says, the most difficult part of being a refugee is the negative stigma that comes with it. Refugees leave everything behind in pursuit of a better life, but often are ostracized when they get here. So another one's talking about being also feeling like the other all the time, and whether she's going through trainings, educations, settings, trying to better herself, always feeling like you don't belong, So again, another one is saying, like we do not want to be perceived that we are here to just, take jobs from other people. We do not want to be perceived in that negative light. We want to be perceived as contributing citizens. So these women speak about that refugee labor as being a significant cause of stigma that they have felt in their entrepreneurial journey. The other second one that we found is the veil, the hijab itself being a source of stigma, and particularly being perceived as not good enough, not qualified enough, not smart enough. As one woman says, I don't look white or American, so then they assume I don't speak English, or that I'm not smart as everybody else. Now, these things have implications in terms of whether you are seeking opportunities for funding, seeking opportunities for training. The perception of a Muslim woman with hijab as being always defenseless or needing more protection or needing more support or needing more guidance. So these are images that these women have to live with. You're veiled, okay, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. The veil being a barrier. So many of them talked about that, like if I'm operating in an environment, the clients do not feel that they can talk to me. They do not open up to me because of, my hijab. Others talked about that some of them, in some organizational settings, their hijab is being confused as means of actually rejecting the values of the Western context. So it went as far as that, which is of course a misconception, a mistake, just because, a woman wears hijab or is dressed differently does not mean that she has rejection for the environment that she's in, or incompatibility of values. So these are some of the ideas going around. The third has to do with the negativity related with media. As I mentioned before, the media actually fuels a lot of this stigma. And when we asked women, they actually brought it up as one of the areas. When we see the media, how they portray Muslim women, most of the time they're talked about in a negative light. We are not really sharing the successful stories, and there are many, not just at a national level, but within even like our Texas, Houston area. There's a lot of significant, successful entrepreneurs that are women that are doing great work. So we don't shed the light on them. The media, again, always talks about them in a very negative. When women are portrayed, they're talked about in negative light. And when they are successful, we don't highlight that they're Muslim, right? So the media is something that's definitely a source of stigma. Many of them are also talking about how they have to provide explanations to other things that are happening in other parts of the Muslim world. So Muslim women entrepreneurs have to provide explanations as to why this happened, or why this, political group did this, or why does this person, why did this political conflict or war emerge? And they have to kind of, be always in that ready mode to explain and justify. I don't know if the brothers have the same experience, but this is the experience of the Muslim women that are out there trying to create these businesses. So one person says the challenge is not of starting a business, but it is the negative stigma of being a Muslim woman. And when something is shown on TV in a negative light, it automatically treats how, impacts how they are treated. This fourth one is one that really hurts, I guess, and it's the lack of diaspora support. It's the lack of, are we as a community supporting Muslim entrepreneurs? And interestingly, these women are saying, I may have found support for my business from my immediate, husband, brother, son, but from the local community, from my social circle, the support is not there. And that's really significant. I mean, we are here gathered to talk about, okay, how can we build this, Muslim economy? How can we, put our resources together and make something big and be independent and all that? But if we are not even supporting like the small businesses, that's a problem. For me, I feel like this one is the one that hurts most and tells us we need to go to, like, ground zero. We need to work on that. So some of them are saying, to be honest, even some of my close friends would not shop in my section of the store. Others said some of them feel like they themselves don't believe you should be doing this. Like within the Muslim community, some are saying, are viewing the refugee that you shouldn't be here. You're not going to make it here. You don't speak the language. Your skill set doesn't match. So they themselves don't believe that these people should be here anyways. So that makes things very, very difficult when this is coming from within. They're not really convinced that you have what it takes, and they're not going to be supporting it. So that's telling us all that we need to pay attention to our own actions and hold ourselves accountable. Yeah, 1%, they don't see the vision. They only want to push back, saying, just go back. It's never going to work, all that stuff. So I'm really hoping that today one of the implications that comes from the discussion is, as these sources, these organizations are out there, we need to ask ourselves, are we creating these avenues for development for these women to get the kind of support that they want? And number 5, of course, is access to capital. So a lot of these Muslim women entrepreneurs, they don't know how to go about getting access to capital. Either they don't understand the regulation, or they don't speak the language, they don't know how to fill the paperwork. Many of them probably may not know the difference between the different financing options available. Worldwide, there's a 1.5 trillion credit gap for women-led small businesses. So generally, women are not pursuing funding as much as men. So this is, it could be gender-driven. It could be that they do not know, again, they don't know the ropes. They need to be coached, all of that stuff. And the 6th barrier that was found is lack of institutional support. Yes, in the US, compared to other organizations, there are a significant number of institutions that provide education, trainings for entrepreneurs, incubators, all of that good stuff. But for these women, again, Muslim women entrepreneurs, they don't know how to navigate them. They don't know how to get assistance. Sometimes they are, even though they are minorities, they're unable to tap resources that are targeted to other minority groups. So for example, like, are you Spanish speaking? No, I'm not Spanish speaking. Do you identify yourself as Hispanic? No. Therefore, you cannot benefit from any, minority benefits. I had another, one of the comments, one of the sister, she went to get benefits as a minority, and then they told her, okay, well, do you identify as Black? And she said, well, I'm African American. They're like, you're not African American. She was like, okay, I'm from Egypt. Egypt's in Africa, so I'm African American. They told her no, and then she doesn't get the benefits. So I mean, it's very, very interesting. We hear the struggles of these women. So again, having institutions that can help Muslim women entrepreneurs get the training they need, get the aid, finding out how to apply, and telling them, what does that mean? Minority, okay, minority, but what kind of benefit does that get me? And again, if we are trying to be independent, we don't have to abide by the labels that are circulating around if they're not serving our own interest, right? So what are the solutions? So then I don't kind of just, you know, get you all depressed from all of the problems. The solutions, the obvious ones, is of course the support from the diaspora. Like we as a community, we need to pay attention. Each of us know that these women that are finding themselves entrepreneurs, majority of them are doing it out of necessity, out of not being able to produce income or find another job. We need to find ways to provide funding for them, you know, in a halal, Sharia compliant way. And we need to find ways to hook them up with different institutions that are providing training. I mean, there's a lot of business professors, you know, that can do trainings. Myself, I'm available, and others to help these women move forward. You know, there's many institutions like Goldman Sachs. They have a program for women that are starting their business, and it's a free program that can be leveraged. There's a lot of resources online. I just picked up a few. You know, some are targeted, of course, towards Texas, finding out how do you start your business, how do you do a business plan, and all of that stuff. But most important is female mentorship. You know, and I just want to, you know, stop here for a minute. I'm gonna remove the picture because I realize the women don't have hijab, so I want to be held accountable for that. But just, subhanAllah, like women role model mentorship. I think that's very, very important. You know, again, I'm seeing initiatives in Houston. There are starting to be these social circles of young women professionals and, you know, for, you know, women to train each other. But this is definitely a huge need that we need to have, is to have that pipeline of mentorship. You know, let's not wait till our sisters like get to the job market and try to find mentorship within their social circle or within their organizations. That's, unfortunately, it doesn't exist. I'll tell you, even from an academic perspective, and being in academia for, you know, over a decade, it's not there. You know, it's not, or some people have it, some people don't. So if we can create that for each other, we can create that pipeline of mentorship within our community, and again, that can follow across the different fields. So how do you deal with the stigma? And that is the bigger problem. You know, as I mentioned, the other solutions are obvious, but the stigma, what do we do? So research on stigma says, number one is hide, right? Hide in the sense of, you know, take cover, right? You don't want to show the element that you're being stigmatized about. If it's your deen, then hide that. If it's your name, then hide that. You know, if it's the way you dress, hijab, then, you know, figure out another way to, you know, to not look Muslim, right? That's one option. And we hope that this is not the option. But unfortunately, some of our respondents in the research took that option to try to blend in or kind of, some even disassociated from the Muslim community. You know, so it's disassociating from the stigmatized group. That's also very, very dangerous. You know, how are you gonna build a community if people finding it more advantageous to stay away from other Muslims? That's a problem. So hopefully hide is not the option that you know, our sisters will choose. So the second option that came is coping. You know, and in this coping is basically, number one, acknowledging the existence of stigma, acknowledging the reason for its existence. Now, again, there could be a passive way to this coping, and that is, you know, very often people will sympathize with their stigmatizer. Like, you know, you're stigmatizing against me. I'm going to put myself in your shoes and say, you know what, I can see why you see me that way. And to the point that I am apologetic about it, right? So definitely some sisters were doing that. But other sisters took a more proactive approach, and that is saying, acknowledging the stigma, talking about it, building their skill set in order to overcome any stigma, you know, getting the trainings that they need to be successful entrepreneurs and help other entrepreneurs and be that source of support and mentorship for other sisters. So I'm hoping that, inshallah, like with this research, we can start to talk about some of the real issues that are impacting our Muslim community, particularly helping more and more women that have decided to take a path of entrepreneurship to, you know, overcome these challenges. And with that, finally, I just want to echo the point by Brother Hood about inclusivity. You know, because one of the areas also that I work on is this area of inclusivity. And the question is, our Islamic institutions, whether they're mosques, whether they're nonprofits, are they really inclusive enough? Do they really reflect the diversity that we saw here? We saw diversity, you know, on so many slides. So we need to look at that and say, our Islamic institutions, mosques, leaderships, board members, are they really reflective of the diversity of the Muslim community? Whether that's by gender differences, whether it's by age differences, and definitely by ethnicity. Because that's going to translate what's going to happen and what is to come. If that leadership is not diverse, I'm not going to expect for a diverse pool of, of incomers or newcomers to fulfill those roles, basically. That's it. I think I will stop. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.